For years and years, without people in this country knowing too much about it or caring too much about it, Sir Edmund Hillary has trudged regularly after the part of the world that made him famous. Almost yearly, Sir Edmund has gone back to his beloved Himalayas, to Nepal, not to bathe in the glory which he is afforded there in Nepal, but to roll his sleeves up and to do practical work to help the development of the Sherpa people. They call him their Bara Sahib, the big man. Mark Sainsbury in the first of three items with Sir Edmund in Nepal.
He's been stalking these hills for decades now. When we joined him to look at the land that changed his life, we had little idea that it might nearly take it as well. They call him the Bara Sahib, the big man. To us, he's perhaps the quintessential New Zealand hero.
Namaste.
To the Nepalese and the Sherpa people in particular, he's much more. He's the closest thing you can get to a living God in a country that truly believes in them.
Yeah, I don't really take it all that seriously, actually. I regard, the people here as my friends, and it's more that aspect of it that is important to me.
The Nepalese celebrate Hillary not for being the first man on Everest, but for the dedication and love he's shown to the Sherpa people over the last 30 years. But the sacred mountain, named after the Indian surveyor general who never saw it, eventually dominated Hillary's life, just as it does the landscape. We've now climbed to over 12,000 feet. That's the same as Mount Cook back home. But to give you an idea of the scale of things here, there's Everest. And that would mean another 17,000 feet still to go. Tengboche Monastery is the cultural centre for the Sherpas. Sitting on the path to Everest, no expedition passes this way without securing the blessing of the Rinpoche, the 14th reincarnate of the original Lama. But even reincarnates need the cavalry occasionally. Hillary's visit is auspicious. Age and health problems determine an easier route to the monastery door. A monastery being rebuilt thanks to his efforts. The monks turned to him when it burnt down. It was from here Hillary himself left to tackle the then unconquered Everest in 1953.
Well, it was, 38 years ago when we climbed it. It was a great experience then. Oh, it's still a fine mountain and still difficult for people to get up.
You've never had the urge to do it again?
No. Now, the Tenzing I ever had the feeling, we were first in a sense, and as a consequence, we never had the sort of motivation to want to go up again. Nowadays, everybody wants to go up more than once. But then they didn't have the pleasure of going up first.
Hillary in the Himalayas is becoming something of a dynasty. Even in the remotest of areas, it was proving impossible to get away from them.
Hi, Dad.
Oh, hi, Peter.
The old master, you look like Mahatma Gandhi with that.
Living with his father's fame must have been hard for Peter. Nevertheless, he survived and achieved things for himself. But the fame was also something that came as a surprise to his father.
My feeling was that I had climbed another mountain. It was the biggest mountain, obviously. I thought that the mountaineering community in the world would be quite interested in the whole thing. But I had no idea that the media and the public in general would be as interested as they turned out to be. I think I was sort of a rather naive sort of person, perhaps, in those days.
Do you think that your New Zealandness help both in terms of the climb and in terms of handling the fame, if you like, that came after that?
Yes, actually, I do, as a matter of fact. When we all went back to the UK, George Lowe and I, of course, were the New Zealand members of the party, and we were, every day we were having cocktail parties and champagne and smoked Scotch salmon, and we were meeting lords and ladies and all the rest of it. George and I thought it was the funniest thing we ever experienced in our lives. Whereas our fellow members, all very good fellows themselves, took it extremely seriously. But George and I simply regarded it as an experience, of course, and an honour in many ways, but as being pretty funny too.
It seemed this trip was in fact like a testimonial trek to the 71-year-old Hillary. Just a suspension bridge away was George Lowe himself.
A kiss for me?
What? No, I haven't. I could bugger off anybody. No.
But even greeting his old friend, the signs were there that all was not well.
I'm tired. Somewhat tired.
But other problems began to surface. A group of Canadians who had gone ahead sent back a message.
Both are unable to leave Tami and thus need emergency helicopters from Tami to Kathmandu.
Lady Hillary weighed up the options as the Kiwis unkindly suggested Ming Masering's horse might be a cheaper escape vehicle.
Yeah, there's horses and horses, then there's Himalayan horses, then there's Midland's horses.
By evening, the weather deteriorated, and so had Sir Edmund. The Kiwis maintained a vigil in his room, desperately rebuilding the oxygen equipment from the local Hillary hospital to keep him going. In the worst of the weather, Ming Masering, Hillary's loyal Sherpa friend, led a party out into the elements in search of more oxygen as the remaining supplies fell perilously low. By first light, he was back, just in time. His old friend had exhausted everything we could find. Getting him out was the next problem. A mountain of a man, we juggled him towards the chopper pad, the Sherpas clearing a path. But as we struggled with him down the hill, one hand from the local elder seemingly transported Hillary from his lethargy. The risks he undertakes coming here are calculated ones. He knows the score, but it says something of his love of the place and the people that he persists. For both his party and the Sherpas who cried for their Barasab throughout the night, the relief of the helicopter getting in was unbelievable. Equally unbelievable was Hillary himself the next day, guiding us again, this time into the political heights of Kathmandu, to the Prime Minister Krishna Prasad Bhattarai, who knows as much as anyone Hillary's standing in Nepal, especially at election time.
If he runs for an election, you would very gladly give him a ticket because he's a sure candidate. He will win the election.
No one doubts Hillary's love of Nepal, the mountains, and especially the Sherpas. But how can he risk it all, especially after this episode, travelling to altitudes that endanger his life?
I have the alternatives, perhaps, of lolling on a sun-drenched beach with the waves rolling in, something I find exceptionally boring, or going off to the Himalayas, meeting friends who I've known for years, and doing something that, sure, there may be the slight risk, but which for me is very exciting.